What up? Salvador Brakeman here, and I hope that you've been taking action this week towards your goals. If this is the first time you have been listening to this podcast, the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast, my man, I'm a little bit crazy because back in 2015, I launched this show because so many people in my life, so I started my blog in 2012, so many people in my life were like, Sal, can you really get funding on these websites like Kickstarter, Indiegogo? Can you actually do this? Right, man? Like, this seems like a scam or a fraud. And I'm telling you, I would tell people, look, I mean, even today's guest, for example, today's guest raised over $500,000 on a website called WeFunder.com. Plus, they raised $1 million on Start Engine. And if you're at a cocktail party and you're listening to someone like myself who's passionate and enthusiastic tell you about that, you'd probably be like, no, this dude is crazy. There's no way you could do that online, right? So that's exactly why I actually started this podcast, is to share with you those real world case studies and success stories. We at CrowdCrux, my company, we're dedicated to providing high quality educational information. I'd say 99% of the information we provide is free, and really give that to you. So not only can you be a fly on the wall listening to this incredible success story, but also learn about what went well for this campaign. What are they doing behind the scenes? How are they driving marketing attention? How are they actually getting people excited, right, in order to actually fund their project? How did they hit the $500,000 mark? And with their previous campaign, what did they learn, right, about doing an equity crowdfunding raise? So today's podcast episode is going to be about equity crowdfunding, which is a little bit different than Kickstarter and Indiegogo. The biggest difference is that this is really for startup companies and founders who want to raise capital for their company. And they're willing to give away a little bit of equity in order to do that. Versus on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, you don't got to give away no equity, right, to raise those funds. So if you listen to this episode and you listen to the end, not only will you learn what goes into a successful equity crowdfunding campaign, but also you'll hear about some of the advice that today's creator, who has had an incredible exit before and has built his current company to over $4.5 million in USD revenue generated sales. So in terms of his prior company, he had a massive success. He actually took the company public on NASDAQ and did an IPO, which for entrepreneurs is kind of like winning a bit of a trophy, right? So you're going to learn about that and more on today's show. And the last thing I'll say before we get into this is, if you really want to incorporate this into your business as a strategy to get funding, if you want to get an equity crowdfunding campaign out there, you want to launch it, you want to get funding from the crowd, you want to get investors, so you want to do it fast, go and check out my free equity crowdfunding course at crowdcrux.com/equity. Equity course, rather. That link is crowdcrux.com/equity course, crowdcrux.com/equity course. And for those of you that also want to go even faster and also want to have the blueprint to be successful with this, I do have a free Audible book called Equity Crowdfunding Explained. You can grab a copy of that book going to crowdcrux.com/equity audio. That link again, crowdcrux.com/equity audio. So links down below, but let's get into this. Let's discover how this entrepreneur was able to raise $532,839 from 435 investors, and how they were also able to raise $1 million on Start Engine. It's coming up right after this. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. We're speaking with an incredible founder who's been able to attract over $531,000 on WeFunder for the next generation of input technology. Think Minority Report. This technology is a game changer, and we are lucky enough to have the founder here today on the show. Dovid, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I love when we can get started. Maybe you can just fill in some gaps in that introduction and tell the audience more about what you've been working on here, and also bite size of your background.
Sure. Well, I'm actually an electrical engineer by training, and I've been in the industry now for quite a long time. Most of the time that I've been working, it has been as an entrepreneur, and generally it's been commercializing and building companies around technologies that I've invented and developed, and bringing them to the market and funding those projects and ultimately getting exits. I'm actually the inventor of the first real-time digital X-ray systems in the world. The application group was for dentists. So for all of you who go to the dentist and they put a little digital probe in your mouth and take an X-ray and get it instantly, that's the technology that I developed. That particular company did very well, and I took it public on the NASDAQ less than 5 years after founding it. Uh,
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It was really a fantastic experience, and I learned a lot about, all of the different tiers of financing and a lot of the challenges that I'm sure anybody who's an entrepreneur can relate to in
For
building
sure.
a company like that. After that, I became interested in what is really a fundamental problem, but something that we don't yet, most of us don't encounter every day, which is, all right, there are all of these new wearable technologies that are coming out, either they're virtual reality, augmented reality, and other things that actually are still in the drawing board. And they're all early stage right now, and I bet that in the audience, some of you may have tried virtual reality, but not many have tried augmented reality. Um,
Hmm.
but the issue is that unlike anything that has been available to us in the 150 years since the QWERTY keyboard was invented, there is no fast, easy, ergonomic manner to control these devices, to enter text into them, to control the menus, to navigate. And if you just imagined, trying to use your mobile phone, let's say, without being able to touch it, that would be an awkward experience of using voice and other types
Right.
of
It hasn't really progressed at all as well since, the invention of computers, right? In terms of the keyboard, it hasn't really gone very far.
That's right. The QWERTY keyboard has become ubiquitous, and even though it's not really, as everybody knows, sort of optimal for human interaction, but it's so familiar that everybody is comfortable with it, and we do whatever we have to do to be able to learn it and use it in a comfortable way. But that is not available in this new level of technology. And right now, augmented reality, or really it's smart glasses, are beginning to break through. And although they've had a bumpy road, a lot of the technical problems has been solved, and that dovetails with an opportunity to marry these glasses with AI agents. In other words, multimodal artificial intelligence, where if you put on these glasses, not only do they give you data and maps and information and things like that, but they also can help you get through your day. So if
Right.
you're
So you kind of witness this problem, right? Which we're seeing more and more of in society. I think a lot of people, when they witness a problem like that, are like, "Gosh, that sucks. I really hope that someday someone's going to do something," right? But you actually decide to do something about it. Out of curiosity, why do you think that you kind of move towards creating these solutions versus other people maybe just kind of that stays as an idea in their head?
Yeah, I think that what I bring to the table and a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in technology, do is that we know a lot about the actual tech, what can and cannot be done with the technology. And so when we see a problem like this, we can think very specifically about what can be done to solve it. And so it's just sort of the way that we are. Like, I know a lot of people can relate to this. Like from the time that I was very young, had a fascination with how things worked and taking them apart and attempting, sometimes successfully and sometimes not, to put them back together. And and I always wanted to just build new things and solve these kinds of problems. It's really just a personality aspect. It's kind of like being a painter, an artist, and whether or not that's going to be what your family wants you to do or whatever, you have a drive to go ahead and create those sorts of things.
Right, right. And I still think at the same time, there are many people who have these ideas and they just kind of go nowhere. Why do you think that, you have been different in your career and with, today's specific project in getting something out there when so many other people struggle with that?
That's a great question. I mean, I believe that the criteria that I've developed, and an easy way to define it is that you've got to be able to see the end zone. You have to see the end game. You've got to be able to have a very clear picture of where this has to go. If you and there could be lots of blockers and tacklers, in between, and those have to be dealt with. But you know where you're going. You know what the end zone is. If you don't know where the end zone is, then you're not going to get there because you just don't have that crystal clear vision, and that will not allow you to make the thousands and thousands of decisions that you make between the time that you start your project and the time that you get to that end zone. So you've got to see that clearly. And that's always been my criteria about whether an idea is viable or not viable.
Okay, so basically having a very clear vision, right, when it comes to the company and the product and the solution. So for TapXR, for Tap Systems, what is the vision when it comes to your company here?
Right. So the vision is that, as these glasses become more prevalent, and as more of our computing starts moving to them, there's got to be a critical mass to make that happen. There has to be enough benefit in wearing, a new wearable, that you wear like glasses, in order to make it worthwhile to go through the barriers in order to do that. But once that happens, and it is happening now, then there is no way to control it. And so that problem becomes front and center, and that is happening right now in real time. And so the end game is that as these glasses become ubiquitous, we become, the global solution for how people are going to interact with them. And that will be through partnerships, perhaps through acquisition, but it's going to be getting inside the ecosystem of these glasses, and that's a crucial part of what we're working on right now. I mean, we've been working on this technology and we've perfected it, and now it's a matter of getting it to be married to these glasses in a way that everybody says, "Oh my goodness, they're so easy to use. This is so simple. I can do everything that I could do with my keyboard and my mouse, and just by tapping my fingers."
And for those that are, just kind of listening here, and this is the first time they're hearing about your product, what are some of the results that you've had already with your first generation?
Right. So our game plan was do this in a two-step process. Really, it's more than two, but the first step was just to bring to market a very simple implementation of this device. By the way, what the device does is it just senses very micro gestures on your fingers, and when you tap on something, could be anything, your arm, your leg, or a table, it will generate a digital code that will correspond to what you just did. It also has a built-in mouse, so you can point at things and also activate them that way. And so and by tapping, you can tap anything from just a simple menu command all the way up to the full alphabet and anything that you have on your QWERTY keyboard. So we brought that to market first just to see, it's such a new and different technology that we wanted to see that people could adopt it. We wanted to be able to perfect the experience and see what problems there were still to be solved. And once we established that, and we sold about 40,000 of them, it was really kind of an experiment. And we thought, well, we'll sell a few thousand, to people who are early adopters. But in the end, we sold 40,000 of them. It has a 4-star rating on Amazon, and it was very successful. And people do like it. They can learn it, they can adopt it. And so we went for the second step, which is, of course, a wrist wearable. Just put it on your wrist, you attach it to your smartwatch, and it does the same thing, that it interprets finger motions and finger taps to digital commands. And
Very cool,
that's
very cool.
right now, yeah.
Awesome. I mean, that's incredible. And you've gotten so many 4-star reviews. I think 4.5 million you've generated in revenue as well when it comes to that. So take me to the day. I'm sure you have so many ideas. You have a bunch of patents as well. In your portfolio here, I think 100 patents or over that. Take me to the day when you really decided this is what I'm going to focus on. And what was the criteria behind the decision there?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, so what I did when I was thinking about this problem, and I do this a lot, is I developed, what I'll call a thought experiment, and it's really just, well, anyway, just imagine again that you have to do all of these tasks with your computer or your mobile device, and you can't touch it. Well, what are you going to do? And you have to do it when you're on the move. You have to do it when you're not alone, in public. What are you going to do? And so I gamed out a couple of different scenarios, and one of them was tapping, was this idea about tapping. And all right, I kind of, all right, recognized that that was a possibility. But as I began to, where was the day? Well, I began to kind of figure out all of the details, what it could do, how people would, get adopted, what all the issues were. I just became absolutely convinced then, as I am today, that tapping will be a incredibly important part of how we interact with technology in the future. And whether it's our small company that makes billions of dollars with this, or whether it's not, I mean, and I sure hope it is, and I think it will be, but whether it is or not, tapping will be part and parcel of how we deal with the next generation of technology. And once I realized that, and I have a high bar because I know how difficult it is to build a company and the technology and go through all of the.
I think a lot. Yeah, I think a lot of people would say you're crazy to go back into it, right? Because doing one successful company for many people, like that's a success of a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And then you're deciding to go back to it.
There was sort of a sinking feeling, where I realized that, I just had to go paint this picture, and I just had to go do it, and because I think it's so important, and it solves a problem which was over the horizon, and still is, slightly over the horizon, which most entrepreneurs don't have the wherewithal to really do. But I knew that I could do it, and I knew that I had both the technical tools and the background that I was able to do it, and so it kind of picked me in a way, like, it landed on me, and I felt like, well, nobody else. I mean, this is an incredibly overlooked and simple solution to so many problems, and I just knew that I had to go for it. So that was
So yeah, I mean, it sounds like step one is the vision. Step two is really becoming convinced and having like that airtight case that you're confident that this is something you want to do, right, for the next couple of years. From that point, is it as simple as making a phone call and getting investors? Is it beginning to field interest? What is that process like once you get to that stage? 'Cause I think it's a big mystery for many people.
right. And I will say that the getting inertia, getting the forward momentum to start the company is the most difficult. And entrepreneuring is full of difficult challenges, but there's a special challenge to overcome in actually getting enough critical mass that you actually have a company and have a project going. And some businesses are easier than others, but all of them require you to change what you're doing with your life and change what you're change a lot of.
You got to give up something.
And recruiting people who are going to be like-minded, and whether they're for giving you seed capital, or whether it's for coming on board and throwing their lot in with you. This takes time, and it requires a huge amount of wherewithal, and hats off to all the entrepreneurs who have gone through that. It's a very, very difficult thing, and it can't be done unless you have absolute conviction and commitment. Cannot be done, in a let's try this, and see what happens kind of way. There has to be a real push in order to make that happen.
And thinking about that, I think a lot of people are looking at, okay, so I got to go out there and I got to, spread my case, and I got to make the right connections and, meet the right people. How long would you say it really takes when it comes to like, getting your first capital in the door to be able even to expand? Is this like a 6 month process, a year-long process, a couple of months process? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that it should be less than a year. It takes a few months. There's luck, you know. I mean, no successful entrepreneur, I think, will argue with the fact that luck has a lot of things to do with this. And so sometimes you're lucky. I mean, what we do when we start our company is we go to our network of people. We go to the people, our friends, or who we think might fit into what we're trying to do. We go to people that we know who might have a little bit of capital that they're willing to invest in this kind of, outlandish idea. And that can sometimes, work really quickly. And sometimes, you've got to really dig into it. But what I would recommend for people is that just talk about your idea to everybody, as appropriate, obviously. Um,
Right.
but just tell people. You will be surprised, and you'll be able to tell right away if they light up, if they are interested or not. And that's really the best thing to do to start a company like this.
If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist, fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. And in looking at this, I mean, this is a huge marketplace. I mean, we're projected in 2030, I think, to be, nearly 300 billion, right, in the size of consumer electronics. So there's definitely that saying that, a rising tide lifts all ships, right? Who do you feel like this is so far? You've had over 1,000 people singing your praises here, bunch of investors on WeFunder, people who have been purchasing your product as well. What do you think the commonality has been that people have gotten excited about this?
So there are different, groups, and people invest with different criteria. Some people are excited just the fact that the founder is, not just myself, but my co-founder is Sabrina. So just, very briefly, I was able, as you reach out, I was able to get Sabrina Kemeny, who I'd worked on with my X-ray projects, and she's one of the co-inventors of the CMOS imaging chip. That's the technology that's enabled all of the digital imaging that's in the world. She's an incredible, person in this industry. So it's a matter of getting teammates for investors. Some people invest with the founders, which I think is certainly a good check mark. And I actually, remember, an investment banker telling me that, some people invest in a team that's so good that no matter what the idea is, they'll get it to succeed. And some people invest in an idea that's so good that even management can't mess it up. And I think both of those are valid. You've got to look at the idea, you've got to look at the team.
Yeah.
And I think that you should look at whether there is a vision towards where this is really going, because a lot of good ideas don't necessarily have a good exit. So you've got to think about how the money's going to come out back to you.
So in looking at some of the people who have invested in what they've said, Delphine, she's a country girl who says that she personally thinks this is the main asset for the future generations. Other people say they hate typing in VR and using annoying joysticks. You have people who have also participated in your start engine round previously, it looks like, and have gotten excited. And a lot of people seem to really believe in the technology and have invested multiple times with you when it comes to that.
That's right. And that's that's really a great feeling to have a team. I believe that we have an amazing team of investors in Start Engine, in WeFunder, we've done also a Reg D offerings with angels. and it's a beautiful family of people, and we all share this common vision, and it's inspiring to me, and it's motivating to me to deliver on what this technology's promise really is. And for me and for all of the people on my team, it's really been very, very gratifying to have people who believe in this and are willing to put money, which is a big deal, to put money in a project like this.
For someone who's been, thinking about raising capital and they're hearing about Reg D, regulation crowdfunding, how would you compare the two? What's like one or two, pros or cons, would you say, between those two, or is it even a comparison?
No, it is, and it's a great question, and there's other routes also, private equity and venture capital, and crowdfunding, I think, is an amazing thing, and people sometimes get so many problems that people complain about with America, and I mean, crowdfunding is a brilliant mechanism, and then this really is why America, I believe, is in such a strong position and continues to fool the critics and come back again and again with amazing technology that changes the world, and runs the economic part of its technology. And it's because of things like crowdfunding, where somebody can come up with a great idea, and if you are in whatever, name another country, well, good luck to you. There's not that much to do, and here we have this incredible vehicle that you can go and you can pitch your idea, and people can evaluate it, and they can back you, and you can really accomplish something. So crowdfunding is an amazing thing, and it's very democratic, which I love, and it is far-reaching, and people can invest.
So one comparison, I guess, would be with crowdfunding. There's a lot of investors, right? A lot of people that are getting involved, and maybe with Reg D, it's sort of a fewer number, or
Correct. I mean, so Reg D, and we only target, we only are interested in angel investors. We're not really looking for institutions, or if we are, they're small institutions. And there's a lot more selectivity, so you've got to do a lot more work in developing a one-on-one relationship with that individual or that small institution. And that takes time, patience, perseverance, investment. It's not generally a quick process. Sometimes it is, by the way, but generally it's not. But the good thing is that once you have that relationship, you really have it, and you have somebody who can really bring something to the company, often is interested in reinvesting as the company, hits its goals and continues to grow. So that's, I'd say, the main trade-offs. I will warn entrepreneurs that are listening that there's a lot of angel organizations that are not all that productive, and so the challenge is to drill down to the actual individuals and to be able to converse with them and find out about them, be curious about them and what they are about. Because if you're just pitching to a big angel group, then you're competing with lots and lots of other companies that are coming in every month with new things, and it's it's something just to be wary of. You have to.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
It's very challenging. And then up the food chain, you do have institutions of all sizes, and venture capital companies. One thing that I'll say is that in my dental imaging company and in TAP, we have one class of stock. Everybody has common stock. Everybody's the same rights, and I think that is extremely important, and it's not for so if you go through the venture capital route, then everybody's got a different class of stock, and they have different rights, and those rights can preempt other people's rights. And if there is an exit, and I've had a lot of experience with this, it's a whole mishmash, and figuring out what you actually earn by having invested in this company becomes something that is very difficult to figure out, and sometimes is very disadvantageous to the small investors. So,
What did that feel like out of curiosity, in going live and having a public company, right? Taking your company public on the NASDAQ, what did that actually feel like that day when that happened?
oh, it was very, very exciting, and really gratifying. And Um, the primary feeling that I had was not just that the company now had access to public capital, which put us in, a much safer and secure place for the first time since it was founded. So it was wonderful. But also that all of the investors that had believed in us and had come along with us for, those years, with their hard-earned money, now had the opportunity to make a decision about whether they wanted to sell or to buy, stay in, go out. And I know that entrepreneurs can relate to this. We carry on our shoulders, the responsibility for all of these people who have invested in us. When you go public, there was this incredible feeling of that lifting off my shoulders and now becoming their choice, and they had the choice to stay in and leave. So it was wonderful. And I am a big fan of accessing capital markets, the public markets, at early stages. And there's a lot of caveats here. The company has to know what it's getting into and have the infrastructure to be able to
Do the reporting, yeah.
Yeah. But I believe that there is too much there's too much discouragement in the professional investing community to small companies to go public with small offerings. I think that is a mistake. I think that a small company that's not, shooting for them, but that has a good story and is willing to go out on the road and talk to institutions and find those long-term investors who like that story, that it's meaningful to their portfolios. I think that it can be a much better look. We all of us who are raising capital, all have trade-offs. There's no no cost way of raising capital. And going public, I believe, is one of the lowest cost mechanisms, and it's a long-term commitment, and you've got to be able to be prepared to meet that commitment.
Well said, well said. And in looking at your story and also your background here, it is so clear, my friend, that you're on the right path, and you obviously have the technology chops to pull this off. You got an incredible market you're going after, and the problem. Is that something in the future? I don't know if you can even talk about this, but are you considering going public with this company in the future, or selling this, or have you just not thought that far ahead, or what are your thoughts on that?
Right. So, I mean, either one of those are possible. However, like I would say that going public is something that's in my control. I can take this company public in the next 2 years, and that's something that is based on me and my team executing. Selling to a big company is something which is not completely in my control, especially in the technology industry. It's different in different industries, but here we're talking about a tech acquisition, and every big company has its own internal politics and so on and so forth. And there's lots and lots of good reasons why an Apple, Google, Meta, et cetera, should buy us. And it might happen, and we are in contact with those companies. And whether they do or not, I'm going straight line towards an IPO sometime in the next 24 months. And they can buy us after we go public, like Beats, or there's a lot of examples
Right.
like that.
Love it. Love it. So I do have one more tactical question, but before we get to that, where can people go learn more about this incredible technology that you've developed? Where can they go check out the live campaign? Where can they go and learn more about that?
Right. So please go to the WeFunder page, and it's WeFunder/tapwithus.com, or .com/WeFunder/tapwithus. And if you want just to learn more about the technology, our URL is www.tapwithus.com. So you can either go to the WeFunder page and find us there, and that has all of the investment information. And I really do think that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for myself. So, I invite all of you to go check it out. And if you want to see some really cool things about the technology, go to our website at Tap With Us.
Got it. I'll make sure to link that up in the show notes. The final question I have for you is kind of on the tactical side, which is you've had one successful start engine campaign, which was incredible. I think you did 1.62 million or thereabouts, a little bit over $1 million with that campaign. And you've also had a great campaign you're running right now as well that people can get involved with. Was there anything that worked well from you in terms of getting the word out, attracting investors, or is this all kind of organic growth?
No, I mean, you got to work on attracting investors, whatever your methodology is. And one thing that I just want to say, that people don't do is use the telephone. If you have a lead, call them. If you're not on the phone, if you're a founder and you're not on the phone, and it's hard, I know. I mean, a lot of the time, reach out in person if you have somebody who's a lead, and bring them to your campaign. So that's, my advice. But, there's a lot of things that you can do. You can, just use, the mailing list of your customers. You can use your social media. You can use, and these platforms will help you, and that is valuable. Digital marketing is something that can work, but it's in sort of transition. So be wary. Don't, be careful about digital marketing. Be careful about people who are trying to sell you canned lists of investors. There's a lot of people out there who are trying to make a buck on people who are trying to raise money for their companies. And so be careful.
Well said. Well said. My final question for you here, and we can end on this note. We can either end with a quote that you like, a bit of advice that maybe someone has told you along the way, or a word of encouragement for people out there working on their ideas and trying to impact the world for the positive.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to all of you. You guys all should, give yourselves a huge pat on the back. What you're doing is very difficult. I know what you're going through. You're walking on a precipice, as many entrepreneurs have pointed out. And, as Ben Horowitz said in his book, if any of you haven't read The Hard Thing About the Hard Things, you should go read it. What he said is, just embrace the difficulty, just embrace it. This is something special, cherish the difficulty and you will get through it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And good luck with your remaining days here on WeFunder.
Thank you so much. This was really fun. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Brigman. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast episode and you took away some nuggets of gold when it comes to crowdfunding and getting your campaign launched. My biggest wish is not only do you get your campaign launched, whether that's with WeFunder or Start Engine or another platform, but you also come back as a success story on this show and you tell everyone exactly how you were able to do it. There aren't really many trophies in terms of being an entrepreneur, but I do think having a successful campaign is certainly one of them, and you should be singing your own praises when you actually follow through, you apply what I teach, and you begin to get some of those results. So for me, when it comes to crowdfunding, I got started in 2012 in this industry, and I was actually living in Brooklyn, New York at the time. I lived in New York for around 6 years, and I saw the major transformation that was happening in the crowdfunding industry. I started sharing educational information. I actually did a mini econ thesis at George Washington University for my econ degree, economics degree, and comparing the different categories on Kickstarter using a logistic regression to see which variables impacted success when it comes to that platform. I was also studying equity crowdfunding as well. So I kind of first came at this as an academic angle. And what I realized is that this is a huge opportunity for every entrepreneur out there. Not only is it so easy to get funding, but also nowadays, all you need is really a video, a campaign page, a pitch deck, a business plan, and to be willing to market the heck out of this project. And you can get people that are regularly investing in these startups on WeFunder, on Start Engine, to actually back and invest in your crowdfunding campaign. Now, there might be some things that are holding you back when it comes to that. And I sort of started to think about, how can I really make an impact in this industry? And that's where I started with my free educational information. But I thought back to also a transformative experience that I had when I was younger. And when I was younger, I had an incredible family member, my uncle, who's literally probably one of the smartest people that I've ever met in my life. Now, uncle was a priest, and he was such a kind soul and also so intelligent. And one of the things that we would do every single Christmas is that we would play chess. He loved to play the game of chess. He was such a smart guy, and he would always beat me. He would always win. And one time, I eventually got fed up with that happening. I got so fed up, and I was like frustrated because I was trying my hardest, man, and I kept losing. So I didn't know what to do, but I did the only thing I knew how, which was I went to the library. And I stumbled upon a chess book. And this book went into like chess strategy and how to win and different game mechanics and stuff like that. I didn't even realize that existed, right? So I started to dive through and absorb this book like a sponge. And then I got really excited about the game, started playing online a little bit, went even to a little local chess club. I started to learn from this one guy who was like a brainiac prodigy who had skipped like multiple grades in school, and he was teaching me different strategy about the game of chess. And then the next time around Christmas when I played my uncle, my gosh, I won, and it literally was like a 5-minute game, if not that. And I was so blown away. But what I realized from that lesson was that when you surround yourself with the right people, but you also get access to the right information, and you're willing to absorb that and lean into the process, sometimes you can surprise even yourself with what you can do. And that's what I've always wanted to provide for this industry, which is one-on-one, individualized mentorship and coaching to help people who are serious about this process and want to do it right, who want to ethically impact the world for the positive, that want to build a brand from scratch, that want to get funding for their startup, or really, in so many ways, get headlines and media attentions for this as well, and want to impact the world at the same time. If that sounds like you and you really want to dial into the tactics and the strategies to do that, go down below and book an individual one-on-one coaching call with me. At that link, you can fill out your form, you can tell me more about what you're doing, and you can book an individual coaching call with me. And this is an intensive coaching session designed to be a one-off session where I help you not only through the process of raising money when it comes to doing an equity crowdfunding campaign, but also outline the entire strategy, the tactics, the tools, the things you don't know about going forward. And sometimes if you don't know about what's going to happen in the future, not only are you filled with uncertainty, but you also don't know how to use your time effectively. So this is an incredible opportunity. And as well, I have other long-term coaching options. And also I work on a selective basis with some projects when it comes to this. So if you want to learn more about that, go down below, crowdcrux.com/coaching, and you can book your first one-off intensive coaching call with me. That being said, regardless, I hope that you're taking action, man. I hope that you're, listening to the right voices. You're moving your projects forward in life. And we are action takers. We are champions when it comes to the crowdfunding demystified community. You guys are always blowing me away with what you're capable of. So hope that you take some action, and would love to have you come back on the podcast as a success story one day. My name is Sal, and I will see you next time.